The São Manuel hydroelectric plant, in the heart of Brazil, deep in the Amazon rainforest. Everything the site needs must be transported via a long and arduous route. These transformers weigh over 200 metric tons each. They have to travel 4,000 kilometers before they reach their final destination. The workers at Megatrans are experts. Long distances are easy for them.
You have to drive very carefully.
Our tank is full, 1,200 litres of diesel. We're using up 4 litres for every kilometre.
The haulage convoy covers most of the route easily, but the last 100 kilometers are difficult.
It's getting dusty and it's hot.
The temperature is 40 degrees Celsius in the shade. The conditions merciless. The roads dusty and the bridges old. This is demanding work for the workers and the cargo, but it's also a bonding experience. Mistakes can be fatal. The way across the river is dangerous. A ferry is repurposed into a barge, a highly risky maneuver. Nerves of steel are just part of the job. But that's no use when your luck runs out.
You never know what will happen.
Alta Floresta, in the state of Mato Grosso. It's a sleepy little town, but it's become an important hub for heavy hauls of all kinds. Alta Floresta is the last town before the rainforest, meaning it's on the route to the São Manuel hydroelectric plant. This transformer, which has already been on the move for 6 weeks, will be built into the facility in the jungle. The men have covered 3,500 kilometers since loading up, a slow grind northward into the heart of Brazil. Now it's time to transfer the goods onto a new vehicle. The rest of the journey is unsuitable for the long trailer. Until now, the transport has been over asphalt roads. From now on, the jungle awaits. 8 Megatrans employees have accompanied the cargo day and night. In a dusty parking lot, they prepare to reload the heavy transformer. They use huge wooden beams to secure the gigantic machine while the mobile base is being disassembled. Thomas Weidmann has been organizing heavy hauls in Brazil for 30 years. He knows all the challenges of the trade.
When the transformer was loaded onto the trailer, it was on 24 axles. So now we have to reduce it to 12 axles to continue. And that's what we're doing now.
So far, the transport length was almost 50 meters long, 24 axles and 2 trucks. The cargo alone weighs 200 tons. Weights like this are more common in Brazil. But this transport is still an unusual challenge. The next 100 kilometers will demand everything from the team.
The transformer weighs 206 metric tons. The tricky thing with this haulage will be the river crossing and the 100 kilometers of dirt roads. That's where things have gone wrong before, so you have to drive very carefully.
With heat, dust, and dried-out dirt roads riddled with holes, the journey is getting dangerous. Sometimes progress is a matter of centimeters. A previous haul ended in disaster when a sudden rainfall softened the road. Then there's the river crossing, with over 200 tons of cargo. The current is gentle, but whatever falls into the water is lost. The ferry is old and rickety, its motor weak. Usually it transports cars and small trucks. As there are no concrete ramps, the ferry can't moor securely to the shore, making the loading even riskier. This driver was only just able to save himself from an accident. Everything else went under. Heavy hauls like this are forward transactions. Delays cost money. Lost cargo costs more money. Thomas Weidmann and his Megatrans colleagues are pros. They won't leave anything to chance. The last 6 weeks have gone well for the team, but the next 6 days will decide between success and failure. The transporter is still 50 meters long to ensure that the transformer's weight is spread optimally to protect the road. But the trailer needs to be shortened. At 40 degrees Celsius in the shade, it's back-breaking work. The workers have placed heavy timber beams under the cargo. 12 axles are supposed to be removed from the transport, work which will be done mostly by hand. In the middle, the load is split over 24 axles by 2 heavy steel girders. First, the girders are detached. Then, the individual axles can be moved.
Normally on federal roads, we're limited to 12 to 13 metric tons per axle. From this town onwards, we'll be on dirt roads, so it won't be possible to continue on 24 axles. We have a special permit allowing us to do that.
The trailer is moved by a power pack at the end of the vehicle. The engine generates enough power to lift, lower, and move the entire cargo, as long as everything works. But the remote control has failed, meaning the men will have to steer the beast by hand when the time comes. A risky maneuver.
We can do some things with the backup device, but it's much better to use the joystick, since all the instructions have been programmed: braking, steering. It's harder to do that with the backup.
On this parking lot, the men have room to maneuver. They can afford to be off by a meter or so. But that will soon change. As they move onto the narrow tracks leading to the ferry, space will soon become a rare luxury. Thomas Weidmann starts the next day by inspecting the vehicle. The next 100 kilometers will be the hardest of the whole journey. Breakdowns mean delays, which are expensive. On a German motorway, no vehicle would be allowed to continue driving with these tires. The last 3,500 kilometers have made their mark. In Brazil, the show must go on.
If one is damaged, then it's fine, but it should be repaired at some point. With this one, only the rubber casing is damaged, not the mesh underneath. So we can keep going. There are 8 tires on a row. If 1 or 2 are damaged, we can still go ahead. It doesn't matter.
96 tires carry the cargo weighing over 200 tons. Soon enough, we'll see that having damaged tires matters after all. The work on the trailer continues. The transport train is being shortened from 24 to 12 axles, reducing the length to around 30 meters. Anything more would be too much for the narrow tracks and the small ferry. The men loosen the trailer's retaining chains and screws. These cones weigh 15 kilograms, a weight which they must support several times over. The trailer acts as a harness to ensure the transformer never stands alone. If one part of an axle is pulled out, then the other follows. All of the axles are still connected to one another. Precision work at a weight of over 200 tons. The screws have become stuck from the oil and dust. This is back-breaking work. The sun is blazing, and there's no shade. The back part of the trailer has its own engine, so it can drive and steer itself. But the remote control is still faulty, meaning the maneuver must be steered at the vehicle itself. First, the self-driving part, which will later carry the cargo, is released. Slowly, the 12 axles move forward. Now the self-driving part will be led around the other transporters. Once it's in position, the truck can pull the other part out from under the transformer. Meanwhile, a new truck is being prepared nearby. A real heavyweight. This Kenworth has over 1,000 horsepower, and thanks to its transmission, the necessary power to tackle steep inclines. The axles apply 4 metric tons of counterweight onto the ground. If the Kenworth breaks down en route, the Megatrans workers have a real problem. Out here, there's no backup. This means nothing can be left to chance. One last inspection is carried out before departure. A few more liters of oil in the engine, and diesel too. From here, the truck will only drive 100 kilometers more. Still, a full tank is needed, and that takes time.
We have 2 tanks with 600 litres each, but we'll be using 4 litres per kilometre.
That's 400 liters for every 100 kilometers when driving carefully. After half an hour, both tanks are full. The Kenworth is ready. While the last preparations are being made in Alta Floresta, Thomas Weidmann inspects the road which leads to the river. He sets out for the dirt road in a pickup, slowly checking for bumps and other tricky areas. His 30 years of experience in the haulage industry have taught him the importance of being well prepared.
Am Anfang muss man zuerst mal wissen, ob man überhaupt die Strecke fahren kann. Das muss ja.
First of all, we have to see if we can drive this stretch at all.
Und dann vor jeder Durchfahrt mit einer Ladung muss
And then, before every transport,
nochmal gecheckt werden.
we have to check again whether the road has been used or not.
Mehr benutzt ist oder nicht, aber immer vor jeder Abfahrt muss es gemacht werden.
The route to the river and eventually to the plant passes through fields and dense forest. 9 bridges await. They're all made from huge tree trunks, but they're primitive structures and can be dangerous. They were built by eye, not complex geometry. Soon, they will have to withstand weights of over 200 tons.
The bridge is quite basic. It's made of tree trunks with some planks on top lengthwise. When you look at it here, you can see it doesn't look so good. We'll need to drive more slowly here.
Even if the road ahead is dusty, the Kenworth must be sparkling clean, and that takes time.
Let's drive it on it like this.
The trailer is nearly ready for the all-important switch maneuver. The self-driving base is in position, ready to be moved underneath the transformer. The engine's remote control isn't working, meaning steering must be done manually, which is difficult and imprecise. Despite the help of a truck, the trailer must be steered by hand. The team is reducing the rig from 24 to 12 axles. Anything else would prove too long for the next 100 kilometers. Switching out the trailer requires caution and a bit of eyeballing. The self-driving trailer is slotted underneath the transformer from behind, while the truck tows the previous trailer out from the front. Even if it's stable, the transformer must not stand alone. At a weight of over 200 tons, a doubled support is the best option. The men drive the trailer underneath the transformer at a snail's pace. Adriano Ferraz is the site team leader, a kind of foreman and a middleman between the office and the team. He's been present for the whole of the 2-month journey and is getting ready for the end. Hopefully, a positive one.
Coming from Canoas in the south, we've only had a few small problems so far, like smaller bridges and towns. But the really hard part is coming up now, the dirt track and the ferry crossing.
The team is still making good time. The big rig is ready for the last section, and the transformer is being secured to the trailer. These steel cables will need to hold a weight of over 200 tons on the bumpy road ahead. Adriano Ferraz and his right-hand man, José Rainho, hand out the team's radios.
These are vital for communication.
Thomas Weidmann has driven the first few kilometers of the gravel road. It looks good, and the team is making good time.
The trailer's ready. I think we'll set out tomorrow morning and start the transport.
The rig is all set. After 4 days of preparation, the dirt road awaits. The next day, final preparations on the trailer. The men have been divided up carefully, and every step counts. The men attach a heavy drawbar to the front of the trailer, where the truck will latch on. The self-driving trailer's remote control has been fixed, for now at least. Now the trailer is pulled out piece by piece between the two steel beams.
This is precision work.
José Rainho has taken on the supervision of the rig. He's actually long retired, but still makes the occasional exception for cases like this, where his experience is essential. It's José who notices the power line overhead. 1 meter further, and there would have been an accident with unimaginable consequences. A lucky escape. It's not always serious accidents, but sometimes seemingly small incidents which can delay or even derail the project. The workers had forgotten to fix the bars down to the transformer, which they are doing now. The bars are there to push up any snags which might arise. In front, the truck is positioning itself to tow the trailer. One employee lowers the heavy iron cones using a hammer. For all their modern technology, sometimes elbow grease is the worker's only option. The pressure hoses for the hydraulics are attached. José Rainho makes some last arrangements with the driver. Later, he will be sitting in the convoy's leading vehicle. By 10 a.m. local time, the team is ready. Adriano Ferraz gives the go-ahead. The heavy goods transport is finally on the move. For the last few meters, the men accompany the convoy on foot. Later in the jungle, this will be the rule rather than the exception. Bumps can be smoothed out from the vehicle itself, as long as the technology complies. The first stretch of the journey is the highway to Paranaíta, a small town at the edge of civilization. The 40 kilometers should take 3 hours to complete. This is still an asphalt road, wide and manageable. The bridges here are made from steel and concrete, stable and in reasonable condition. The cargo has been on the move for almost 2 months, and the Megatrans employees have covered some 3,500 kilometers. The destination, a plant in the jungle, seems within reach. In just a few days, the journey should be complete. The heavy haul convoy is slowly edging forward and effortlessly tackling the steep inclines. Paranaíta, the last town before the jungle, is today's destination. The equipment is working, for now. Nature, however, is proving less helpful. While everything on the road is going according to plan, the news from the river is bad. The water level dropped suddenly overnight, meaning the crossing can't take place. The ferry would run aground and get stuck. The heavy haul convoy left Alta Floresta 3 hours ago. At 20 kilometers per hour, the truck is advancing at a swift pace, and the next bridge is stable enough to pass. This asphalt road is leading to Paranaíta, a small town in the middle of nowhere. After this, everything will change. Thomas Weidmann is inspecting the route. He's one of Brazil's most experienced cargo transporters. The transport has gone well so far, but the river's water level is low. This could pose problems for the ferry, used here as a barge. A heavy haul truck on a small barge. Thomas Weidmann is not happy with the route.
Long before starting, we scoped everything out. We have to cross here. It's the only way. We can't take the road, especially not with such a heavy load. For us, this here is the only way.
The ferry is short, small, and past its prime. Its capacity is nearly the exact weight of the load, some 200 tons. Will it hold out? Around here, there aren't many options, and the margins in the haulage industry are slim. Here, every dollar counts.
We also thought about dismantling a barge, bringing it here, and putting it back together. But that would have been too expensive.
During crossing, the conditions must be right on land and water. If the ferry isn't moored properly, disaster beckons. This ship was forced from the bank by the weight of the truck. At low water levels, the opposite is possible.
When you come up to it, you have to make sure that it's not completely stuck. If it is stuck and you want to set off, then you won't be able to. That's why we're going to dig some more ground out, so we have a bit more depth on the riverbed.
The heavy haulage convoy is making good time. It has nearly reached its destination, the small town of Paranaíta, where the asphalt road ends. After 40 kilometers, the 200-ton transport is leaving civilization for good. If the rig gets stranded on the narrow dirt roads, it will cause huge problems for everyone. No one would be able to pass. And Megatrans is not the only team hauling goods in this wasteland. One last check before the team heads for the river. There's still enough space here to park the convoy by the side of the road. It's dusty. The fine sand is also tough on the engine's filter. The truck's first oil change, before the trip has even begun. Leakage is part of the deal. The tires aren't in the best condition. They're showing some wear and tear following 3,500 kilometers, carrying over 200 tons.
I checked the tires and we have 2 flats.
A stroke of luck in the wilderness. Practically next door is a tire repair shop. With a vehicle weighing over 200 tons, changing the tires will be tricky, but doable.
To change a tire, you have to raise the axle using hydraulics and take it out from underneath.
The experts get to work with a small car jack and a very large screwdriver. With a temperature of 40 degrees Celsius and high levels of dust, it's arduous work. A full tire change is carried out. The Megatrans team has 8 spares, but after that, it gets tight. 1 hour later, the job is complete. Out here, nothing is thrown away. The rubber will be patched up and recycled later, either on another tire or a piece of furniture. The operation cost the team around €7. The heavy haul rig is now en route to the river, 50 kilometers on a primitive dirt track. The workers cover most of the journey on foot. They can't afford to let anything go wrong now. If the 200 tons of goods start to slip, then it's already too late. The men check the tires and the cargo over and over. The axles can be adjusted to smooth out any bumps. At a height of almost 10 meters, the cargo is not particularly stable. If it starts to move or tilt, nothing and no one else is there to secure the cargo. This bridge is particularly narrow and old. It's made of nothing but a few thick tree trunks and a mud coating. Nail-biting minutes for the team, but the bridge holds out. Dangers lurk around every corner, even on a seemingly safe dirt road. This transport didn't make it. A few months before, another transformer was on its way to the São Manuel hydroelectric plant. It turned out to be a disaster, costing millions. The road hadn't been properly prepared and suddenly gave way. Everything was lost. Out here, nothing can be salvaged.
The transformer was cut into pieces. There's a whole load of copper in there which can be reused. But it was carved up and taken away. It probably would have cost 2 or 3 million to send it back in one piece. It was 220 tons. So just to get the crane there, it would have needed a capacity of 1,000 tons.
Prevention instead of damage control. The men must march on despite the scorching heat. The road is getting tighter, the bridge is narrower. The team is continuing on foot, guiding the Kenworth and its heavy cargo through the country. Ahead, the path is being leveled. The clay road is rock hard and riddled with deep holes. This grader has been tackling the road's worst holes and bumps for the last 2 days, at a huge extra logistical cost for the heavy haulage. But it's worth it. "30 hours in, the transport reaches the river. The first stage is complete, but that was the easy part. The transport has covered over 3,500 kilometers. Now, the 500 meters across the river will decide between success and failure.
We're happy that we've got here okay. It's always tricky on a dirt road. As you saw, there are a lot of narrow bridges to cross. Everything went well. Our team is very experienced. I'm happy we're here now. Once we're on the other side, it will be onwards to the plant.
A welcome break for the men. The trip was taxing, and tomorrow the team's biggest challenge awaits. The rest of the day is free. The crew members are often out together for months at a time, so they know each other well. For this tight-knit community, the highlights of the jungle are the coconuts. Communal meals in a big group are an important part of the day. It's almost like home. Almost. It's a tough business, and to observers, a strange world. The sense of humor is particularly unique. One morning, Dionisio Biceta found his colleague dead at the wheel, cigarette still at the corner of his mouth. Hence, his nickname.
Each of us has our own nickname. Mine is Yamoro. Are you dead?
On the shore, the team prepares for the crossing. The landing zones have to be dredged up, hundreds of tons of mud and rocks. The river's gauge is low, meaning the ferry could run aground with the heavy cargo. To avoid that, the ground must be dug up. Thomas Weidmann and Jose Rainho are inspecting the riverbank. Time is ticking.
This is where the barge will dock tomorrow for the transformer. We'll need to dig up a bit so that the barge fits. He says everything will go as planned. We'll see.
At first glance, the ferry looks like a rickety little boat. It's mostly used by the few farmers who live in the area, but since the plant was built, it's seen more traffic. The ferry was modified to accommodate transport of heavy goods. It's good business for the operators and an expensive necessity for Thomas Weidmann. Without the modifications, this would be the end of the road for the heavy haulage.
It's just a regular car ferry. It was modified a year ago so that it can take heavy loads. The deck was strengthened, and on the interior, they installed cross and side beams, as well as side tanks to improve stability. The ramps were also strengthened.
The ship is further stabilized for transport with these external tanks. But it's still a risky undertaking. The ferry is small, the ground soft. This vessel was not built for transporting more than 200 tons of cargo.
It's been done many times before, but you still have to be quite careful. Since the stability on this ferry is uncertain, we barely have any freeboard.
Success or disaster? This small car ferry is carrying over 200 tons of cargo deep in the Brazilian jungle. For the Megatrans employees, the key moment is approaching, and nerves are running high. There's no room for errors. These are the deciding preparations. The team has been trying to get the technology running all day. The self-driving trailer has caused continuous problems, particularly with the all-important remote control. Without it, the crossing wouldn't work, as the ferry is far too short for the entire convoy.
I've
just spoken to Raphael, the mechanic. He started testing the power pack and realized that one of the cables was shorted. They found a few other things as well. There are some problems with the propulsion. But they think that the biggest problems will be sorted out by tomorrow.
A 200-ton heavy transformer, a huge tractor, an accompanying truck, and some smaller vehicles. All of this must make its way across the river in the middle of Brazil. The ferry has been reinforced, specially for the crossing. Now additional tanks are going on deck to increase the ship's buoyancy. In spite of the time pressure, this is still Brazil, and these are the toughest boys in the transport industry. Even a hen and her eggs are taken into account. The ferry's weight limit is the same as the load which needs to cross, almost to the kilogram. The tanks should provide additional uplift if the ship sinks too low. The Megatrans employees screw the heavy tanks onto the deck. A total of 4 floats should provide more security.
We've secured the tanks so that the barge won't tip over.
There's no shade here. At noon, the temperatures rise to almost 40 degrees Celsius. But there's no more time for breaks. A bulldozer smooths out the last meters of the road before the ferry. Up above, the heavy transport rig gets moving. The Kenworth will be used as insurance on the other side, because the self-driving trailer probably won't manage the steep incline from the ship alone. The ferry already sinks down under the weight of the truck. How will it cope with the cargo, which weighs over 200 tons? Heavy steel cables should prevent the ferry from drifting off, which happens often, sometimes with grave consequences. The first crossing is a success. The ferry brings its load across the river. The men's next task: getting the 200-ton transformer on the self-driving trailer. Now the buck stops with Dionisio Becerra, who will be steering the cargo. After 8 years at Megatrans, he's trusted with the hardest tasks. So far, the remote control has kept failing. Will it finally work as it should? The trailer approaches the bank at a crawl. Even the way there is complicated, and it's almost completely straight. The 200-plus ton load edges towards the bank. Now, the trailer's in position. First to board the barge is the driving axle. And for a good reason, as the team will soon find out. The behemoth edges onto the ferry bit by bit. Then, suddenly it stops. The ship has now sunk so far into the water that the outrigger is lifting up too high. The men try to use planks of wood, but at a weight of over 200 tons, it's not enough. The cargo is only halfway on the ferry, and it's applying huge pressure. The axle just makes it on deck, but causes the ship to lift even more. The captain goes full throttle on the gas to push against it. 2 men are needed. The captain, who must push back against the 200-ton pressure with his little ferry, and the man with the remote, Dionisio Becerra, aka Jamorreo. The cargo is caught. The trailer has pushed the ferry so far into the water that the ramp has been raised up too high for the trailer with its weight of over 200 tons. The captain is still holding firm and stepping on the gas. Dionisio Becerra is steering the trailer by remote control. Until now, it hasn't been working correctly. A game of chance. All of the trailer's axles are steered separately by hydraulics, allowing it to glide over and smooth out bumps, almost like a millipede. When one axle gives in, the last one hangs in the air. For now, it's enough to get the trailer on deck, axle by axle. The heavy cargo is now completely on board the ferry. The ship can now make its way slowly to the opposite bank, where alterations await.
On the other side, we'll need to change out the drawbar after landing. Otherwise, the trailer won't be able to disembark.
The crossing goes well. Although the ship is extremely deep in the water, the current is gentle. On this side, too, there are problems getting from ship to solid land. The Kenworth truck is now the team's life insurance. The self-driving trailer wouldn't make it alone. The ferry is deep in the water, and it's a steep slope. The men shovel earth between the ramp and the ship, placing some planks to help. If the trailer gets stuck here or pushes the ferry away, it could be a disaster. Slowly, axle by axle, the heavy cargo makes its way onto land. The Megatrans employees replace the drawbar out front. The new drawbar is much more stable. It needs to carry more than 200 tons uphill. Next, the big Kenworth gets in front of the cargo. The truck pulls the 200-ton load from the ship with all its might. Thomas Weidmann is relieved.
I think everything went well. There were a few little incidents, but that's to be expected. But in the end, everything worked out. The cargo made it on board successfully, even though the angle at the start was pretty big. And disembarking from the barge was totally fine. There were no problems at all.
The river crossing was just one more step. 70 more kilometers of track and rainforest await the men and their heavy haul. The progress is slow, sometimes at a snail's pace. Narrow bridges carry the road through this virtually infinite wilderness. Under the blazing heat, the men drive through an area which few people have ever seen. The roads on the other side of the river are relatively wide, but the gradients are brutal, up to 17%. The Kenworth will endure all of this through the dust and the heat. It's used up almost 500 liters of diesel over just 100 kilometers. The drive through this expanse will take 4 more days, and then the destination will be in reach. After 53 days, the heavy haulage convoy reaches its goal, the São Manuel hydroelectric plant, having crawled nearly 4,000 kilometers over 7 weeks. They've made it.
We've arrived without any accidents, that's the main thing. It took a little longer than planned, but that's to be expected. There were a few malfunctions and difficulties in getting the right slot on the ferry, but on the whole, everything is fine.
It will be another few weeks before the transformer is fitted and running. The unloading will take another 2 full days, and then the transport will continue on site. The experts raise up the 200-ton transformer using hydraulic pistons before pulling the trailer out from underneath. Heavy logs secure the transformer. Now the behemoth is secure. The cargo has reached its destination. For Thomas Weidmann and the Megatrans experts, this is a routine job. But they can't help but feel a little pride when the turbines finally turn and the plants start supplying power.
We've been delivering to these 2 factories for 3 years now. We delivered their transmission line. So we know what an important role we've played. They couldn't have done it so quickly without us.
When the plant finally starts operating in a few months, the Megatrans employees will be long gone, working on another route. Where? They don't know yet. But they do know that the load will be large and heavy, somewhere in the vast expanses of Brazil.